stream has started, but you're not on the air. You know the difference?
Whenever you tell me the difference, I can't tell it from here.
It means that you're being recorded for the future when it gets put on YouTube, but you're not live on Facebook at the moment.
Okay.
Okay.
And we will be live on Facebook on the, what was it called?
Think Twice Radio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to send you the link?
No, I got it.
Okay. All right. So right now, Twitch has accepted the stream. YouTube has accepted the stream. And Facebook has not accepted the stream. Why not? Let's find out.
Okay. Okay.
I could fix my lighting.
You can. I mean, you're on.
Okay.
Oh.
Facebook has accepted the stream. You ready to go on the air?
Mm-hmm.
Got your timer set?
Yes.
Tell me when you're ready to turn the timer on.
Ready.
Okay. How many minutes you going to go for?
What's our usual, about 55?
55 is fine. Okay. Put your hands in front of your face and clap your hands, and when you do that, you'll be on the air.
Peace and greetings. You are now listening to Talking Peace. I am your host, Deidra EmEl, Executive Director of the WNY Peace Center. And today we are talking about irrigation systems. I said the food desert, but we're going to get a little bit more information in regards to updating this term to food apartheid. So first, we would like to give our Thanksgiving for the land, for the trees, the birds, for the creatures in the sea, for our plants and animals. We'd like to give thanks for the living creatures, the insects. We'd like to give thanks for each and every person in this world. We like to give thanks for the love that emanates from those who continue to work towards justice and to do what is right to do, even in the face of adversity. We give thanks. We would also like to give the land acknowledgement. Yeah, we are on the land of the Haudenosaunee, stolen lands. We like to give an acknowledgement of our enslaved peoples that have continued to build the America and this land that we call New York State. So, and we would like to end in a word of Ashe and Yahweh and you. So, peace and greetings. So we have our guest today is Rebekah Williams, and I wanted to. How you doing, Rebekah?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me here with you tonight.
Good, good. I want to give a little introduction to you all about Rebekah. She is a facilitator. strategic planner, and community organizer. She is the co-founder of Food for the Spirit, an organization committed to racial healing towards ecological justice and equitable food systems. The organization serves Buffalo, Western New York, the Finger Lakes, and New York State. Rebekah is also co-founder of Good Food Buffalo Coalition, working to bring the Good Food Purchasing Program to Western New York. Rebekah serves several initiatives as a board member of the Northeast Sustainable Agriculture Working Group, a pilot community member of Black Farmer Fund, and a steering committee member for Black Farmers United, New York State, and a regional advisory council member of the Western New York Food Futures Initiative. Welcome, Becca. How are you again?
Well, I'm doing very well. So glad to be with you in the Peace Center tonight.
Yes, most definitely. So I wanted to first talk about what values you want for us to hold in this space tonight. So you go ahead.
Thank you for that. I think some values that are important are just mutual respect and just deep listening, which stems from that. Really seeking to understand each other and hearing each other's perspectives and where we're coming from. So yeah, that's the one that's most important, is that mutual respect and seeking to understand and deep listening through that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the value I want to bring tonight is increase of knowledge. The world is constantly changing, and if we're being open to knowledge and to the change and the how things just kind of evolve, and being open to that, sometimes it's hard for us to make that shift. We've known something for so long and that's just the way it is. And it's like, no, we're going to the next level here. You got to stay current and be open, to new information. So agreed. So, so tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into working in food justice, ecological justice, and so on?
Sure. Well, yeah, my work in food justice and ecological justice, I think I'd start with food. Just that it's been a very personal journey for me. I was born and raised in Buffalo, New York. I come from a mixed race family. My father's Black. My mother is German Swedish, white. And, I have, food, the cultural aspect of food. We as a family really enjoyed lots of different foods and really enjoyed food. And my own personal journey with food has been one around loving it, struggling with it. I have had food businesses. I've had a raw food catering business many years ago. I, struggle with the scale. I have a movie on my shelf that is really important to me. It's called Soul Food Junkies, which looks at, the path to health for those of us who eat soul food, which honestly, I did not grow up eating soul food. My mother was the primary cook in the house. So I didn't grow up eating Black soul food, although I love it. And just with that kind of conscientiousness around trying to struggle with my weight and the wellness journey. So that piece of it became very important to me. Now, at the same time, I was a public school student, and I loved school lunch. At home, we always ate like gourmet stuff and tofu and squash and just different kinds of things, And so I'd go to school and I just loved like, chicken nuggets and, sometimes they do the baked chicken or the turkey for Thanksgiving. And I realized that there were certain things that I had gotten from my own family and from the choices that my family and my parents made that not everybody had in the public schools. So another thing that was different about my family is that we spent a lot of time in the country. And I had the privilege of being partially raised on a community where people grew their own food. So I really got to see the farm to table aspect, and so that aspect that became very important to me too, is recognizing that in my wellness journey, learning more about the importance of whole foods, that not everybody has access to whole foods. That we associate comfort in food with the foods that we're raised with and that's in our communities that our families are eating, and that that there's a certain there's something that is missing for a lot of the people that I grew up with, that this connection to food comes from the land. It is grown through the soil, and it doesn't start on the grocery store shelf.
Right. That's right. Yeah. That's interesting. Because I didn't, like, I had similar experiences like you, as far as seeing things grow, like in a garden type of thing. But I didn't see the connection with the farm to table until later. My grandmother in the South, I would visit her in Alabama, and I watched her grow her garden. My mother and my all my grandmothers, just had this green thumb. So I knew I wanted to grow things, but I didn't. But my string beans still came from a can. My corn still came from a can. And I remember.
You're really blessed.
What'd you say?
You're really blessed in seeing that you got to see that family connection to the land.
Yeah. And I think that's what really, I wanted to be with plants. I wanted that energy. I wanted that spirit, that love, that synergy with plants. So I knew that was the right way to go, but I didn't. My first garden, I planted all kinds of vegetables. And once they grew, I said, now what do I do with them? So I called my boyfriend, which is now my husband's grandmother, because she, was still directly from the South. She lived on the same street, it was like down the street from her house. And I said, what do I do with these string beans? Like, how do I cook them? Because they're fresh. I don't never cook fresh food. And so I would call them often, our grandparents, to find out how to make it. And if I didn't know what to do, I put them in the plastic bag, like a little grocery bag, and I would put them in the freezer. And I remember those string beans stayed in the freezer for a year because I didn't know how to cook them. But, I was excited that I grew them, that I saw where they came from. I know, I had this power in my hands of feeding myself. Yeah. As a teenager, and it was just so exciting. But to me was just hilarious. I did not know what to do with those vegetables. I didn't even know how to store them right.
Well, you asked me about where my story started, and that was the root and the foundation. But there you just touched on, the next piece was working with teenagers. I have always been drawn to work with teenagers. I know that point in my life was such a critical and difficult time for me when I was a teenager, a young adult in Buffalo. And I wanted so badly to have an experience that was different, that allowed me to be in community in a different way than the schools did, that allowed me to be outside more and have more of a connection with nature. So when I got older, I always looked for jobs that allowed me to work with young people. And that would allow me to give young people opportunities to be in the outdoors. First, for a while, I worked as a coordinator for bike trips, and they were like week-long to 4-week-long bike trips, and that was great. But it was limited to the people who could afford that, and it wasn't targeting the kids that I grew up with in the city of Buffalo. And then a number of years later, I went through my Montessori education training, and then after that took on a job as a youth education director at an urban farming organization. And it was really there that there was the culmination of my curiosity and love for food, and realizing the need for food justice, that everybody deserves to have that access to food, the foundational understanding of where our food comes from and the choice to be able to grow it. And then it was also there that I really started, seeing how young people and all people, how they can blossom through understanding their food, growing their food, understanding where it comes from. And then, food and food justice can just be another means for people to have agency and power and regain power and control in their lives. So that's really kind of the root of this, is seeing how food is, and food systems and food justice and advocacy around that is another opportunity for us to regain power, to gain power in our lives.
Wow. Yeah, I agree. I think in what we met about 20 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And while you're working with, that type of organization, working with the youth, that was, growing vegetables and being educated and being connected to the land. And I was kind of jealous because I was coming out of school and I went into, the business end of things for adults, and, in the shared use kitchen and so on. But I really wanted to be in the garden. And, I remember going to school, for a good amount of time to be a teacher. So I was just like, but I switched paths like near the end. So my internship, with the one organization where we met, kind of took me into a completely different direction that it was familiar but unfamiliar. I was familiar with business, familiar with food, didn't really like cooking, but it was about organizing and managing other people to cook and so on. But I really wanted to be in that garden. And I was always not gonna, like, what are you guys doing now? What's going on? Okay. So I was always interested in what the youth program was doing.
But now like many others, are finding so many opportunities to get into the garden and to be growing things, right? And I think that's how we've come back together now, is through seeking opportunities for ourselves and for our broader community to be able to get their hands in the dirt and grow their own food.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think that I want what you're doing now. How do you think that affects some of your projects and so on that you're working on now? And what are some of those projects? How is all that connected? Like you said, now, like me and you, we've seen each other throughout the years, but we've been in different circles, for a little while. Now we're, kind of making a reconnection. I know I'm making a reconnection for myself as well, because I've been under the radar with some of my gardening and urban homesteading, stuff. So I was just like, it's something I love. I gotta, kind of come back above surface. So how are you connecting some of those past experiences to your current projects and jobs?
Hmm. Well, let me figure out. Well, one thing I want to share before we completely move beyond the youth piece is that a current project that Food for the Spirit is engaged with members of our Buffalo Food Equity Network is a farm to school workshop that is specifically designed for Black adults who want to work with youth in developing youth leadership and youth advocacy around food and farm systems education. So for a number of years, there has been some movement in the Buffalo Public Schools with the Farm to School initiative. And like what you're saying is like not enough people know what's going on. So the idea of this workshop that myself and the other members of the Buffalo Food Equity Network are working on is the point is to share the information about what is going on in our community, in our school system, that they can engage youth in their schools around. So, really trying to get some adults from the school communities to show up at our workshop. There'll be a cooking class incorporated into it, and people will be able to leave with some food, eat together, but they'll also be able to learn about the movement around Black farmers that's going on in Buffalo, Western New York, and across New York State. They'll be able to learn about food apartheid, which we were just talking about in the opening. So really, I mean, when we settle on a date for that workshop, I hope that maybe I can come back and join you again, Deidra, and we can talk about that.
Absolutely. And can you explain a little bit more about the food apartheid? I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping a little bit. I'm trying to get a little bit of information, everything, out there within less than an hour. But explain a little bit more about what is
food apartheid. I have heard defined, I have read it defined by a few different people. I'll give them credit. The first I know we'll be looping back to later, Leah Penniman of Soulfire Farm. The second is Karen Washington, who is well respected leader in this Black farmer work and movement across the country. She is a farmer and founder at Rise and Root Farms and an activist. And then the third is Dara Cooper of National Black Food and Justice Alliance. So all three of them, I've read their definitions around food apartheid, and it makes sense to me, and I choose to use it now. And the difference is, and a lot of people, some people are just coming across the word food desert. But for people who live in a desert, they know deserts are naturally occurring. You can grow food in the desert anyway. And the difference is, and why we say what we experience in certain neighborhoods in Buffalo is food apartheid, is because apartheid is intentional. And, I used to, somebody that I worked closely with, Lorna Hill of Ujima Theater, she used to say, that it should be that the correct pronunciation was apartheid, and that the root of hate in apartheid. So food apartheid is intentional. It comes about because of redlining, because of racism, because of how Black communities and impoverished communities do not have the same investment. They have a disinvestment. And so grocery stores do not invest there. There's just less resources, right? So it's an intentional lack of servicing and investment in those communities. And that's apartheid. That's not naturally occurring.
Right. That's so interesting. And thank you for enlightening us on that. Because I thought it was so cool. I was just like, creating these irrigation systems, in the desert, However, it's still, I think the work that you do, since you have been on many parts of the spectrum when it comes to food, is bringing people together, making these networks and, veins and and irrigation systems, making these these different connections work, connecting people and organizations and purposes together, I think is one of your specialties, one of your superpowers. And so tell us a little bit more about Buffalo Food Equity Network. How did that get started, and what is it doing now?
Sure. So, I think it's important to share a little bit more about the roots of Food for the Spirit, and because the Buffalo Food Equity Network is an initiative of Food for the Spirit.
Okay.
Food for the Spirit, as you mentioned earlier, our mission is racial healing towards ecological justice and equitable food systems. And the organization for me became a thing in 2018. And I was at that time part of a year-long cohort of a group called the Heal Food Alliance, which is a national organization. And they operate a program called the School of Political Leadership. And so I was one of 10 in the first cohort for the Heal Food Alliance School of Political Leadership. And definitely encourage all of your listeners to take a look at Heal Food Alliance. They're doing phenomenal work, and you can visit their website, Heal Food Alliance, and check out the School of Political Leadership. So at that time in 2018, I was kind of coming to a close with my work with youth. I had some phenomenal experiences learning and growing along with young people, learning how, the ways that I had, the hurts and the pains that I had picked up in my youth that I needed to work through. And I was doing some amazing work with the young people where we were exploring our family histories and our roots, and kind of digging into some of the personal traumas that we experience in our families, or the disconnections between our families and the places where our families and our ancestors were from. So we were looking at the role of place in our ancestral lineage, and the importance of place or ecology, and having a strong sense of our people's place.
Yes.
And of course, for displaced African American descendants of slavery, that's very painful to think about. Obviously, we've turned our experience into, we found ways of honoring and celebrating all of our history. But certainly there is a pain that comes from that displacement. And people, talk about the DNA and how it's in our DNA and that trauma, right? So in 2018, I was starting to do some looking into my own family history and my Black family's connection to land and place. It was easy for me to connect back to my German Swedish ancestors. There's connections to there, and even to the family back in Sweden, even though I've never met them myself, I know how to get to them. I probably shouldn't wait too long, but I know how to get to them if I want to. But for the Black family, I did not know. And my father is the last Williams in his line. Me and my sisters come after him, but we didn't have that information about family. And I, as somebody who considers myself an environmentalist, I wanted to understand my relationship between race and ecology, and my racial experience, and how that fits with my love of nature and the environment and ecology. So I started traveling around and looking for my family history, but then I also joined the Heal Food Alliance School of Political Leadership. And so I was doing both those things at a parallel time. And the Heal Food Alliance lifts up initiatives led by people of color around the country. So they're a membership-based organization made up of organizations that are led by people of color. So they're a food organization led by, right? So as part of their School of Political Leadership, one of the first places we visited was the Cesar Chavez Foundation in California. So not in the the Bay Area, not in the Bay Area, not in San Francisco, not in Oakland, not in LA, It was in mid-California where nothing was except for pecan fields and grapes, right? So this is where the Cesar Chavez Foundation was. And we got to meet elders who had organized as youth, as teenagers, as 20-somethings with Cesar Chavez. And we got to be on the land where his foundation was and where they had started their co-ops. And we were learning from those people. And oh my goodness, it was eye-opening. So we went from there to Cleveland. So that was January of 2018. And then March of 2018, they took us to Cleveland, where we learned from a number of different organizations, and they actually did their annual summit there. And then in June, we went to Minneapolis, and then we ended in New Mexico. So talk about the deserts, ended in New Mexico. And in each of those places, we learned from Black, Indigenous, Latinx, people of color led organizations who were doing amazing long-term justice work, either developing co-ops, work. It was amazing. So that coming back to Buffalo, over the number of years that I had been working in the position as a youth educator, as the only woman of color at an organization, food systems organization, I had been reached out to a number of times by Black leaders working on the East Side who wanted to learn from our organization. And they often reached out to me. And I felt a certain level of responsibility. And also at that point kind of came to a head around, I did not feel comfortable with my light-skinned, mixed-race heritage of my middle-class socioeconomic background being the only person of color within this well-funded organization. I know they did great work and they seek their funding, and rightfully so. And that we needed more investment and more leadership and more collaboration and support for organizations and initiatives led by folks of color and just neighborhood folks. It doesn't have to just be organizations and initiatives, but also people in Buffalo who are working on the ground. So that was the Buffalo Food Equity Network. The roots of it was there are all these amazing people doing important work in Buffalo. So I got to see it around the country, but I also knew it was going on in Buffalo. And I knew that it was important that we begin to get to know each other, work together, figure out how to collaborate and lift each other up. And we needed increased investment and resources and access to resources for those folks. So the Buffalo Food Equity Network, yes, it's 200 people, all identify as people of color. Anybody who identifies as Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Asian, anybody who identifies as a person of color can join. It's a listserv, but it's also, we get together in person and we try to support projects and initiatives that are led by Buffalo Food Equity Network members. So that's the network.
That's awesome. I remember because you started that in 2019, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly 2019. Because I was working with, I was still at the Peace Center, but I was working with another young lady at the time, and she was kind of transitioning out of the Peace Center, but she was like, she knew about my other work with the, urban farming and stuff like that with, with the other organization that I'm a part of. And she was like, do you want to be on, in a part of the network? I said, yeah, add my name. So I didn't have the time per se, to do as much as I wanted to do, but I wanted to be, connected, so, and then it took me a year or so to figure out how to write inside the listserv, how to respond. That was hilarious.
There's a lot that we need to do, and actually we're in the process. We're only just starting with this organization, right? So we just are getting ready to hire our first director So Food for the Spirit is going to hire a director for the Buffalo Food Equity Network. And we just got to keep building, and, we got to move beyond just using the listserv. So more in person, more direct connection with people in Buffalo. I mean, now we do our potlucks and our dinners every once in a while. And, we, of course, help with the Juneteenth Agricultural Pavilion and with Freedom Gardens. But there needs to be more ways than somebody just posting on a listserv. So we're getting there, and folks should look at the if there's anybody interested in applying. The deadline is November 14. We are looking for network builders, community builders, network weavers, people who love people, who want to lift up, our people, people who are about self-determination and leadership of communities of color. So check it out, and it's on our website. So if you know anybody who wants to apply, it's on Food for the Spirit's website.
And we have some wonderful, do you know Sue Phillips? Sue Phillips is posting in our Facebook, I believe it's Facebook, posting the links for Food for the Spirit, for nutritionstudies.org, Food Apartheid, for Chavez Foundation. Thank you so much, Sue, for helping us out today and giving us those links, because those are extremely important for us to, again, educate ourselves, update ourselves, and get connected with one another. So now you mentioned
you can find the Heal Food Alliance too. Drop the Heal Food Alliance link in there.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Sue, again. Hill Food Alliance, and they have a school of political leadership. Am I correct?
Yep.
Wow, that sounds so exciting. And you got to travel and see what others are doing all around the country. I think it gives us a whole new perspective on what we can do. She says, you just had such interesting topics brought up. I had to look them up and post.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Yes, excellent. Yes. Thank you so much. So we'll keep that on our site as well, and hopefully we can get that into our intro on our YouTube as well, so people can go to those sites. You mentioned Leah Penniman, and so for some of you who don't know, the Western New York Peace Center is going to have our 55th annual dinner, November 11th, and our keynote speaker is Leah Penniman, co-director and farmer of Soulfire Farm, which is a Black and Brown community that is uplifting and educating people around the world about land legacy, ecological sustainability, and Black farmers. She has a book called Black Farmers. Right, let me see if I can pull it up. Thank you. Farming While Black. I'm sorry, I had it all mixed up. Farming While Black by Leah Penniman, and the forward is by Karen Washington, who Rebekah just mentioned earlier, who is a wonderful activist in food justice and ecological justice. So I'm really excited. And what are some of your experiences? Now, when she comes, she's going to have some special time with the Buffalo Food Equity Network, and some, you all are already previously connected, which I'm so excited about. How did you get started connecting with Soulfire Farms and Leah?
Well, I mean, I met Leah the first time actually at the Heal Food Alliance annual summit in Cleveland. And I attended a panel that she was on there. I believe Dara Cooper was actually in the room, and others, and it was just a phenomenal space. And then I had the opportunity to connect with Leah on a couple of occasions following. One of our Buffalo Food Equity Network members is actually a co-director at an organization that it had its roots at Soulfire Farm. So soulfirefarm.org, yep, thank you, Sue, is Leah Penniman's organization. And then a spinoff of there was NEFOC, NEFOC, which stands for Northeast Farmers of Color and Land Trust. And it's not exactly a spin-off, but it did have its roots. Soulfire Farm was its fiscal sponsor. And so Stephanie Morningstar, who is a member of our Buffalo Food Equity Network and who actually lives in the Buffalo area, is a co-director of Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust. So early on in the founding of the Buffalo Food Equity Network, Stephanie Morningstar asked whether or not we wanted Leah to come stop through Buffalo. And of course, at that point, Leah was on the Speakers Network. She was nationally renowned already. I think her book had just come out potentially. Yep, probably had just come out. So people were reading it. And so when Stephanie Morningstar said, do you want Leah Penniman to stop by in Buffalo, to have lunch with us? It was like, yes, definitely. So Leah came by in April of 2019 on her way back from Toronto. We had a potluck meal. And yes, thank you. We had a potluck meal and she came and was just so inspirational. She's always just so inspirational. And her big question for us is, what do you want to have come out of this? Like, what do you want after now? Like, so here I am in Buffalo, sitting here and having this conversation with you all about how beautiful you are and how important the work you're doing is, and what do you want to have happen after that? And so she actually had planted a seed ahead of time and said, I'm going to ask you all this question. And so we had some time to think about it before we got together with her. And so some of the things that came out of that were the Juneteenth Agricultural Pavilion. That was actually a big thing that came out of her coming and asking us that, because we started talking about it. And when we talked about it, Jamie Swigert was like, well, I've had this vision to do this agricultural pavilion. And so then she brought that up when Leah Penniman was there, and everybody was like, yes. So now we've been supporting the Juneteenth Agricultural Pavilion as a network, and really supporting that. And then Leah came back. So Food for the Spirit does annual events called the Buffalo Food Sovereignty Weeks. And it's just, every harvest season we do events that really try to uplift initiatives led by folks of color in Buffalo, food initiatives. So the first inaugural Buffalo Food Sovereignty Weeks, we hosted Decolonizing Our Diets and Farming While Black. And it was a panel discussion, and we had Neftali Duran, who is of Oaxacan descent, and a chef out of Massachusetts. We had Chandra Miracle, who's Six Nations, local part of the Indigenous Women's Initiative. And also known as a cook. And we had Alexa Joan, who is an African-American chef, plant-based chef in the Buffalo area. And so the three of them led a cooking class all day for people we call community cooks. They made a feast. They did local barbecue bison and collards and strawberry dishes and so many good things. I'd have to look up that recipe. And then they served it for people who came to their panel discussion. And they talked about the concept of decolonizing our diets and what that means for our community. And then following that, Leah did her keynote on Farming While Black. And it was wonderful. We did it on the east side at the Girard. Oh my goodness! It was at I think it was at I want to say Girard Place. Yes, on Bailey, and it was wonderful event. And then I did have the opportunity to go back. Actually, before that, I did go to her BIPOC fire immersion. So it's a farmers, Black, Indigenous, people of color farming intensive on the land at Soul Fire Farm. So I applied for that the summer of 2019, and I went over to Troy, New York, which is where Soul Fire Farm is, and did their farmers immersion. So I'm not a farmer. I'm an activist and a food systems organizer. But you know, I did their week-long training, and I killed a chicken. Oof, I don't even eat chicken, but I killed a chicken. As a Buffalo girl, and all the chicken wings I ate, I felt like I should pay some homage and try my hand at giving respect and doing it very very mindfully. And it was a really powerful experience, but also just working on the land in community with others was really amazing.
I think they have some chickens or some hens available right now on the farm.
At Soul Fire?
Yeah, at Soul Fire, one of their their newsletters. So I know they're doing something with hens and either selling or giving them away to that kind of thing. But it's up. Wow, that is just amazing. So, from what I hear, she's a beautiful person. She has a beautiful spirit. She's very down to earth from what I hear. And I just look forward to talking with her and connecting with her. And our time is almost up. I wanted you to share with everyone how to, you've been dropping a lot of great websites already. But how can people get more connected with you and even learn about the new program director job? How can they reach out to you?
Sure. People can visit our website, www.foodforthespirit.org. You can sign up for our email newsletter. We only send an email newsletter about once every quarter. So we just sent one out. But right there on our website, you'll see the banner for our hire for our position. People can also go to bit.ly bit.ly/2022 _ now this is important, all uppercase BFEN capital J lowercase OB capital O lowercase p lowercase p. So that's 2022 _ BFEN job op. And it's a bit.ly link.
Okay.
But I think it's probably just easier just to go to our website, foodforthespirit.org, and look for our banner right on there. And I just wonder if your listeners might be interested. I have a few books. When I leaned over to get Soul Fire Farm, I could just do a real quick, Farming All Black, do real quick. There's a few other books here in the pile. This was, so of course, she's an amazing person, Natalie Bazile, and that is Leah Penniman and her sister Naima on the cover there. I talked about
the name of that book for our radio audience.
That was We Are Each Other's Harvest, celebrating African Americans, American Farmers, Land and Legacy by Natalie Bazile, author of Queen Sugar. And then I want to just give a pitch. We're in the midst of the Farm Bill. I know you have a lot of advocacy and justice folks that are listening. So this, if you really want to understand the role of food systems, this is an amazing little zine. And this actually comes from that organization in New Mexico that I got to visit back in 2018. It's La Semilla, LA SEMILLA. So it's La Semilla Food Center. And the book is Look at the Farm Bill from the Paso del Norte region, Food, Land, and Us. And it's just phenomenal little zine. I've used it as an educational tool a couple of times. Freedom Farmers, this is amazing. Check it out. Monica White's Agricultural Resistance and the Black Freedom Movement. And this one, for anybody who's living within food apartheid or curious about it, Black Food Geographies, Race, Self-Reliance, and Food Access in Washington, D.C. So Ashante Reese is just really just a phenomenal thinker, brilliant woman. Forward by Dara Cooper, who I mentioned from the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. And finally, Black Faces, White Spaces by Carolyn Finney, reimagining the relationship of African Americans to the great outdoors. So just some themes we touched on.
And who was that by again?
This last one is Carolyn Finney. There you go.
My goodness, awesome information. So please see I'm going to try to get all this in our description when you look us up on YouTube, Western New York Peace Center, and you can get all these links here. But if not, that's okay. Go to foodforthespirit.org and reach out to Rebekah Williams and let her know that you've been listening to Talking Peace, and that you want to know what books did she mention. And thank you, Sue. I appreciate you. I might have to hire you for each Talking Peace. You are awesome. So she put up our the book for Black food geographers, a link to that book. So wonderful. What are ways that people can get that you want people to get involved, that people can help support? What are ways people can do that?
Well, following this show, I'm going to send you an email with direct links to the job opportunity and to the job posting on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So if the Peace Center will share that, then please, if your listeners will then reshare the job posting. And if you're somebody who this fits for, please apply. The deadline to apply is November 14. And then just, sign up for our email newsletter so that you're in the loop about what we're up to. And any way you want to get involved or support, please let us know. Definitely.
Wonderful. And we will have the Juneteenth Agricultural Pavilion at the 55th annual dinner. So come out and see what it's all about. So I'm excited to have a representation of the Buffalo Food Equity Network.
I'll be there.
Yes. And so maybe you will sit at my table if you're not sitting with other people. If I'm sitting at all.
Right. I'll save you a seat at your table.
Yeah. But I think it will be wonderful. Hopefully we'll have awesome night. We will have an awesome night. And we'll just be among a lot of just family and friends and just lots and lots of love from hardworking people working for justice and health for the planet, health for our communities. And so until next time, thank you all for listening. Thank you, Richard Wicca of Think Twice Radio, our producer, and 91.3 FM WBNY for playing our Talking Peace. And we have been Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center and Rebekah Williams of Food for the Spirit. And until next time, peace and love.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have officially ended. Richard will be coming back in soon. So we are technically still online. But thank you so much, Becca, for doing the show with me. And it's always a pleasure talking with you. You always have so much, great and wonderful information. Thank you, Sue. And let's thank you, Sue, for helping us out. She even got the peacecenter.org on there. That's what I'm talking about. Get your tickets today for our dinner. Make sure you're present so we can connect with all of you. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, let me know the next thing that's coming up. When is the week? The farming intensive, not the farming intensive. You mentioned a week.
Buffalo Food Sovereignty Weeks,
Sovereignty
which
Week.
I actually failed to do this year.
Oh, you did a lot this year. Oh,
I know. Did you hear me stumble for a minute? I was like, it's an annual event. And then I thought, gosh.
Not this year. You've been doing a lot this year, though. A lot. Especially,
we just came back from Atlanta. We had a week in Atlanta for Race Forward and the Black Urban Growers. And then
I thought I was doing bugs. Did you go to bugs too?
Yeah, it was all in 1 week. So the first part of the week we were there for Race Forward training, and then we were there for Black Urban Growers. And then this weekend we've got the Skillshare.
Yeah, I can't keep.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
You and me both.
It's a lot. Yeah, more to list. But the Bugs Conference, I think, is awesome too. From what I hear from Miss Della, Miss Gail.
It was amazing.
And she brought me back.
She brought you back a T-shirt?
Some cha-cha. Cha-cha, the cha-cha, the condiment. It's a Southern traditional condiment.
Oh.
And I've been thinking about it for years.
Okay.
Because an elder back in my old church, she used to make cha-cha every year. And I think, where was she from? Arkansas? She was from, she was like directly from the South. She came up here during the Great Migration. And she would make cha-cha out of her garden every year. And that's a whole nother thing, these hidden gardens of these Black elders that have been doing urban farming for years before it became a thing, for these spaces and, urban. In these backyards is collard greens and tomatoes and green tomatoes and peppers and mustard greens and turnip greens. And they will take those vegetables from the back and can them and share them. And, I just miss that. That generation is dying out of the first, the major Black migration from the South is dying out. And thank you, Sue. She put up the canning tradition Southern style cha-cha out there. Yes, so I
just came on to see whether or not we were still on, and we are. They still got us going.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to do one more closeout. But it's so much to talk about. And that's why you got to go to the websites and get more information, read the books, join the network, and just be a part of this growing family of growers and activists and food makers and producers it's really wonderful to see. Years ago, we did not see it the way we see it now. It was popular, but not too popular. It wasn't organized. And that's the biggest thing is being able to organize people together, and bringing people out of the woodwork and out of the underground, they've been doing it, but it's like, well, I never knew you existed. I didn't know you existed. What, you have a farm behind my house? You do? So you start to make these connections that you never knew existed. So that's why I'm excited about Buffalo Food Equity Network, which I am a member. And proud member and excited about our next meeting as well. So, yeah, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And like I said, I have to get your number soon. And and yeah, you come out and help us out at we're looking for volunteers. Come help us out at at the Peace Center for our annual event. And some people may not, really understand how the Peace Center is connected to food, and that's one thing that we didn't really talk about too much this week. But next week we'll have Jim Anderson on and Dr. Samina Raja on to talk about basically what does peace got to do with food security, and how are all those dots connected, and it has a lot to do with it, locally and internationally. And of course, we have our environmental justice task force that we try to, that I want to, just make more of those connections with, if once we secure and keep the environment sustainable, that's the same thing with humans. We have to, one can't be without the other. We can't have sustainable and wonderful environment without having sustainable people, and vice versa.
There's been a couple of different occasions where I've heard Leah Penniman talk about the connection between peace, international peace, and food issues. And I actually mentioned to her, I saw her in Atlanta a couple weeks ago for the Black Urban Growers Conference, and got a chance to just chat with her for like a couple minutes. And I said, "Oh, I heard you're coming to Buffalo for the Western Peace Center's annual dinner." And I said, "I used to be on the board of the Peace Center." And I shared a little bit. I didn't actually say that with you on the show, but I used to be on the board when I was 19 or 20. I served on the Peace Center board, and actually, my first bout in food justice was as a Peace Center board member. I was arrested as part of the Wegmans Five. The Arturo Rodriguez of the United Farm Workers Union, actually, where Cesar Chavez was at, however longer before him, was coming through Buffalo, and they were organizing a protest of Driscoll strawberries at Wegmans in Cheektowaga.
Right. I remember that. Yeah, we were protesting that as well. I mean, we wasn't, part of the larger protest, but, the congregation, was a part of, we were protesting that as well. Oh, wow. Wow, that's amazing. And I knew you had some history with the Peace Center. I heard that you started, some gardens in the back when we had a building on Genesee Street, was it? So I knew we had some roots, in food, and we were also part of the organizing or co-organizing of World on Your Plate, which I'm hoping to bring back in full effect soon. And can you tell us more about your experience with the Peace Center?
Sure. Yeah. Back then I was doing a lot of community garden stuff. I was living over on Northland and Jefferson, and I was inspired by the number of vacant properties around there. And some point, Ray Rosen, who was also a board member at the time, recruited me to serve on the board. And there's a couple of gardening days, which I don't know why I'm attributed to have started the garden, because don't know how to grow anything. I'm not a gardener. So I'm not sure how
it wasn't like a program per se. It was just, some of the kids that were coming to the Peace Center, you wanted them, and there was some yard space in the back. So I was just told by former board members, I would see, as the new director, even though I've been with the Peace Center for a few years, as a new director, I would still hear stories about what the Peace Center used to do, or some of the, issue areas we used to work on. And so that's how you came up. And, because I talked about, people don't understand the connection, or they don't really talk about so much of the connection of food security and land sustainability.
The same community where I got my understanding of the farm to table, I also saw an example there of how people work together to sustain themselves, their families, their communities in a way that is not power over, but power among or power within, right? And so when I was part of the Peace, when I was in the Peace Center community back then, and heard that Driscoll Strawberries was spraying pesticides on the fields when the families were out there, when people were out there in the field. I mean, I hadn't thought much about pesticides, but just hearing that the complete lack of humanity that these company owners had for the people who were growing our food, to me it just was a complete, it didn't make any sense. I had seen a community where everybody from the person who grew the food to the people who threw out the garbage to the people who cooked to the people who took care of the kids to the people who made the livelihood and the people who made the decisions, they were all equally respected. And so, I mean, so what the Peace Center stands for in terms of really respecting all people and equity and justice and love. I mean, those things made sense to me, and to hear that, just learning the things that the Peace Center was lifting up around the atrocities of CEOs and corporations and how they treat their workers. So that's food systems and the food supply chain and the treatment of farmers, and not farm owners, but farm workers, who are people who grow our food. They're the people who grow our food.
Right.
So.
Right. That's wonderful, Rebekah. So I might be knocking on your door again. Get ready for my board.
So I don't know about you, but I think I'm going to sign off just to get ready for, we've got a big event coming up. I mentioned we have this Black Farmer Skillshare that's tomorrow. I got to leave early tomorrow morning and head up to Rochester and start organizing for that. So
I'm going to let you go. I really appreciate you. And I'm just, just for record's sake, we've been having a little bit of technical difficulty, but so we're going to do our closing one more time. You have been listening to Talking Peace on WNY 91.3 FM, and we are also on Twitch and Facebook and YouTube Live. Thank you, Rebekah Williams of Food for the Spirit, for coming on and talking with us today about food apartheid and healing solutions. And until next time, we've been Talking Peace. Blessings. Thank you, Rebekah.
Thanks, Sister Deidra. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good day. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.